can see your dirty pillows. Everyone will.
Breath, Mama. They're called breath.
They're all gonna laugh at you! They're all gonna laugh at you! They're all gonna laugh at you! So, Mr. Mash, it's autumn. What happens during autumn?
The fucking brats go back to school.
All the kids go back to school.
Thank Jesus.
What was not a particularly good time in my life?
High school?
High school. I have a lot of mixed feelings about high
Life?
school. Would you say that high school was not a particularly great time for you?
I'm indifferent about high school. There was a lot of it I liked, and then there was a lot of it I hated.
Would you say that high school was horrible?
I don't know if it was horrible, but there were certainly parts of it that were certainly terrifying.
I see what you did there. There have been quite a few horror films set in high schools. It's a popular topic.
Shall we return to Horror High and talk about them? See what I did there?
And that makes sense to me. Where is the place you're most likely to find teenagers? Don't say them all.
High school!
Yes. You know, horror films are frequently about teenagers because teenagers
In the
are terrible
backseat of
people.
their boyfriend's car.
Uh-oh.
Get a 5 for that.
Yeah, sure. Horror films are usually about teenagers because teenagers are both stupid and terrible human beings. What do you think is the first high school horror film?
Carrie?
Probably. I think there might be some that actually predated. Let's go with that. Carrie was the first high school horror movie.
The girl with the strange power.
If I concentrate hard enough, I can move things.
But tonight, no one will laugh at Carrie.
You don't have a date for the prom next Friday. Would you like to go with me?
She's with the best-looking boy in the senior class.
He's trying to trick me again.
She'll be voted queen of the prom.
You know, I can make sure that you don't hurt Carrie White anymore.
For Carrie, it will be a dream come true. For everyone else, it will be a nightmare. If you have a taste for terror, you have a date with Carrie.
What do you think of this movie, JD? The original 1976 version of Carrie.
It is certainly interesting.
It's a very good film. It might honestly be one of my favorites. Every time I watch it, I appreciate it more. This movie is important for a couple of reasons. First off, it was a horror film that got nominated for 2 Oscars, which is rare. They usually do not even allow the horror movies into the Oscar building.
That's racist.
I think so. Also introduced the final jump scare into the horror movie cliche library. This is really the first film to do that.
Oh, so really, Carrie's the one we have to thank for that.
It certainly is overused.
For every single Friday the 13th movie.
If you watch the behind-the-scenes stuff on the first Friday, they say that jump scare in that movie was inspired by the jump scare in Carrie. They were ripping it off directly. Let's talk about Carrie for a bit. What's the plot of this movie, Mr. Mash?
Girl gets abused by bullies at school. Bullies get bullied by a gym teacher. One of the bullies asks her boyfriend to take Carrie White to the prom.
Because she's had an about-face.
She realizes what she's done is
Asshole.
horrifying. Yeah, asshole-ish. I like that word, asshole-ish. On top of that, Carrie's school life sucks. And then she goes home and it's not much better.
Yeah, her
mother is the same accusing bully.
Her mother's a religious fanatic. And
Yeah,
insane.
hits her with the Bible and
Locks her in a broom closet and tells her to pray.
although, in this one, I really like the fact that the mother doesn't beat her down with the Bible. She like taps her in the face with it and says, say it.
Eve was weak.
Eve was weak. Say it.
You're doing that as Donald Pleasant.
No! Okay.
What's the big plot development that really makes Carrie a horror film?
She realizes that she has telekinesis. She does like most teenagers. She researches her new abilities. Really only utilizes it in times of great stress.
She's still learning to control it. The movie is engineered build towards the finale. Carrie gets taken to the prom. She's actually having a pretty good evening with Tommy Ross. The real villain of the film, Chris, and her boyfriend very famously drop pig's blood on her, and then she
Goes apeshit.
Carrie kind of loses it.
Let's talk about that look.
The stare of doom.
Yeah, her eyes just widen and her hands go straight out.
Yeah, Sissy Spacek doesn't blink for 30 minutes.
That's what makes this movie scary, is her look.
I've heard some people complain about how, oh, Carrie's a movie, you wait 80 minutes for her to go crazy crazy at the prom. But the whole film really is engineered to build towards that.
It's one of the rare horror character studies, too. At least I feel like it's a character study.
No, absolutely, it's a character study.
You don't really see that. At least I have not seen that a lot in horror. At least in the modern age.
It does happen from time to time. Of
And
course,
this one does it well.
Spacek is, of course, absolutely amazing in this film.
Most of the cast is pretty decent.
Yeah, Spacek especially. It's a perfect performance. She completely owns this movie. She conveys such a strong vulnerability and such a deep sadness. I mean, you just feel so
Although
sorry
I will say
for
this movie is incredibly 70s.
Obviously, the fashion, the bell-bottoms.
So incredibly 70s.
And maybe that's why they keep remaking the damn thing to update it for the new generation, because this film is dated in that regard.
You know, maybe they should just start doing shot-for-shot remakes and just update it every 10 years.
Something I figured out about this movie is it's a coming-of-age story. The movie begins and ends with blood and water, signifying two different losses of innocence. That opening scene where Carrie gets her period is pretty famous.
Yeah.
Upsetting. Any dude who's squeamish about menstrual blood...
I'm not squeamish about it, but I don't like going down the tampon aisle at all. That bothers me.
This movie was directed by Brian DePalma, who does a very obviously manipulative thing with that opening scene, because you have these girls in the shower, and it's in slow motion, and it's very soft-focused, and it's intentionally erotic, and then Carrie starts bleeding from her crotch and freaks out.
It looks like the opening of a high-quality porno.
Glossy 70s skin flick. And something else I've always wondered about that opening scene, and we're gonna wander down a weird aisle here, but is Carrie almost masturbating in that opening scene?
I don't think so.
Because she has her leg up, and she's moving the soap down there, and then she drops the soap, and her hand keeps moving, accidentally masturbating. I've always thought that. Maybe because I'm a pervert.
I think it's because you're a pervert.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I think if they would have gone with that masturbation thing...
Well, she doesn't know she's doing it.
They would have went that route. I think that instead of the first 15 minutes of that movie focusing on, oh my god, Carrie's 16 years old and just now got her period, it would have been, well, she was flicking the bean and accidentally caused her hymen to break, and then she freaked out.
That would be terrible. More blatant in the whole loss of innocence there. She gets her period, she doesn't know what it is. Because her mom is a religious fanatic and never told her.
Girls that listen to this.
I mean,
if you're very religious, you won't get your period until you're 16.
I don't think the religiosity has anything to do with it. Carrie's powers are tied directly with her. She gets her period for the first time, and that's when she first discovers her abilities.
And she shatters the light above.
Exactly. Her character arc is a struggle against her mother. She's completely powerless in the beginning to do really anything against her crazy, authoritative, religious fanatic, lunatic, bug nut, apeshit mother.
And then she crucifies her at the end.
Her abilities give her the chance to fight back. I mean, there's a scene where she convinces her mother that she's going to the prom, and she can't do anything to stop her.
She tries to get up off the bed. Sit back down, mother!
It is a character study. And honestly, when the movie shifts away from Carrie, I feel like it suffers. I really don't feel like the rest of the cast is that interesting. Amy Irving gives a good performance as Sue. Nancy Allen is very villainous as Chris.
And the Great American Hero makes a good Tommy.
William Catt is in this movie, yes, as Tommy Ross.
Nobody knows what his real name is. They know him as Tommy Ross or the Great American Hero.
Or, House.
Oh, or House.
He was in that, too.
Yeah, but you know me, I like House 2 better.
Yeah, we've talked about that in depth on this show. Brian DePalma, before he directed this movie, was better known for some very strange comedies he had made, and that weirdness leaked through several times. The girls are in detention and weird upbeat music playing, and the whole thing is kind of framed in a lighthearted manner. Well, the thing that really sticks out is when Tommy and his friends are trying on tuxedos, film speeds up. Mm-hmm. What the fuck are you doing there, Brian DePalma?
Try and offer a little bit of levity. At the time that this movie came out, it was probably really dark.
It does stick out a bit.
Let's talk about that gym scene there for a minute.
What, the girls in their little short shorts?
And hot pants. And
make an impression on you, JD?
Jumping jacks. Oh boy, the jumping jacks. The great thing with that scene is it really sets up how much of a bitch Chris is actually going to be.
She's a terrible human being.
If she would throw away her prom, the one thing she cares the most about.
Because she's a shallow piece of shit.
Because she's a shallow piece of shit. She must be the bad person in this.
She's cartoonishly evil, and that's Stephen King. His villains are never particularly well developed. And speaking of not particularly well developed villains, Carrie's mom, Margaret White, that's my only issue with the film, is that character and the way she's handled. A very loose, religious fanatic cliche. Piper Laurie. Boy, does she go over the top. When she starts smacking herself, Mama, stop hurting yourself. I can see your dirty pillows, Harry. They're called breast, Mama.
You have them too.
Obviously, people like this performance. She got a nomination for it. I just feel like Piper Laurie goes way, way over the top. And if you watch the special features on the DVD, she talks about how she was playing it for comedy. She read the screenplay and said, oh, this is trash. And then she saw a couple of Brian De Palma's films and said, oh, it's a comedy. I don't think anybody else got that memo. Now, do you think this is a revenge story?
No.
You're correct, it's not. And a lot of people have that misconception. A lot of people think it's a revenge story, and those people are wrong. They're incorrect.
It's not a revenge. I think it's... What happens at the end is emotional release. She goes through all this perhaps throughout the whole movie, dealing with her mother, dealing with kids at school.
You watch The Prom. If this wasn't a Stephen King movie, you could see her getting out of it. Tommy only dates her to do a favor to his girlfriend, but he starts to like her as the evening goes on. And you can see her coming out of her shell.
There's people that
are being nice to her for the
first time.
That are being
nice to her for the first time.
That honestly makes the movie sadder for me because you know what's coming. Those scenes just become really melancholic because you know her happiness happiness is going to
And
be
then when the
very
blood drops,
short-lived.
it just blows your mind.
Her entire world shatters apart. Carrie becomes a monster at the end there because she just kills everybody.
Now let me ask you this, though. If Tommy wouldn't have got hit in the head with the bucket, would she have been able to pull back out of it?
I think when the blood hit her, she lost it. Everybody was screwed at that point. Everybody in that gym was going to die. The gym sequence, you have to remember that this is not a revenge story and you're not supposed to enjoy her going nuts and killing everybody. It's a tragedy.
I think you do.
I mentioned De Palma's direction. What do you think of the whole split screen element, where you see Carrie staring on one half screen and then the effects of her power on the other half?
I actually kind of like that.
Maybe
seeing the rage in her eyes at the same time that you're seeing what she's doing to people.
Which is a nice effect. That's a bit of an exercise in style, not story, and De Palma does that a couple of times. There's a scene where Carrie and her mom are talking at dinner, and there's the painting of the Last Supper behind them. I don't remember what Margaret says, but there's a lightning strike immediately afterwards. It's a little melodramatic, but usually his direction does work. I like his use of double focus. There's a great scene where Tommy's in the foreground and Carrie's in the background. Visually displays her worldview, where the boy she has a crush on is very big and she's very little and insignificant. Another trademark of De Palma is the long take. And there's a long take where the camera goes around the whole gym leading up to the bucket in the rafters, and that's a fantastically orchestrated sequence.
I like that. It was pretty cool. And added atmosphere.
Builds tension. And when the actual massacre happens, there's almost no music focusing on the chaos of what's going on. It's really effective.
Yeah.
That scene still works.
I really like the lack of music.
And it works because the music is very prevalent throughout this film. Pino Donaggio's score is fantastic. It's very dreamy and romantic. Carrie has her own theme. She has this mournful oboe, and Margaret has her own theme. She has these pounding, psychotic piano steps. We both agree the prom scene's awesome, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's just very well orchestrated. What follows? What do you think of that? The confrontation between mother and daughter.
Margaret's a bitch.
She's a crazy bitch.
I'm telling you an emotional standpoint on it. I actually like the ending. I hate emotionally about it. As Carrie goes running to her mother, oh, Mama, they laughed at me. She's sitting there consoling Carrie, and then, yeah!
Stabs in the back.
And, you bitch!
The only moment where Laurie's performance is really good is when she's talking about came home with the whiskey on his breath and I liked it. Talking about Carrie's conception. Something we didn't talk about is the very famous refrain of they're all gonna laugh at you. Something to note is display of how lost Carrie is when the bucket falls. She imagines everybody in the gymnasium is laughing at her. When the truth
even
is
the gym teacher.
The truth is only 2 people are laughing. Everybody else is appropriately horrified.
I really feel like in that moment you see that there was only 3 people that actually still hated Carrie.
That were assholes to her. Teenagers are terrible people. They are capable of remorse. Her mother is crucified with the knives. Margaret is writhing in orgasmic religious ecstasy as she's dying. The house collapses. Carrie completely loses control of her abilities. Effectively buries herself.
Pretty cool.
The relationship in microcosm. Throughout the film, when she's being punished by her mother, she's put in her closet. And at the end, where does she retreat to as the house is falling apart and she's...
to the closet.
The St. Sebastian statue parallels the way the mother is killed. The final jump scare, very famous. Sue lays the flowers on the grave that says, Carrie White burns in hell. The hand reaches out of the ground. Did you know that was actually Sissy Spacek's hand, too? She insisted on being buried.
I did actually know that. And not because I know you.
Is that final jump scare necessary? That isn't in the book. That's a complete invention of the film.
It isn't necessary, but it's effective.
The jump scare isn't really necessary for me, but what follows, that final image of Sue's mother cradling her in the room, which appears very womb-like at that point.
Yeah.
Not only does it parallel Carrie and her mother as they're dying, this is sort of like the loving parental relationship she never had.
Yeah.
Brings the movie full circle for me. Did you notice this? In the dream sequence, when Sue is walking around the corner, you can see a car going backwards in the background because they shot the scene in reverse to give it this unnatural feel.
I did not notice that. Well, congratulations, Zach.
Great movie, Carrie, the original 1970s.
Oh, yeah, great movie.
Oh, really fantastic film. I love this film.
One of the must-see films of all time.
It really is a top horror movie for a lot of people. One of Quentin Tarantino's favorite films, you'll be happy to know.
I am happy to know that because Quentin Tarantino is like my favorite director.
Hugely influential, really made Stephen King a huge writer. He was already popular before this, but this movie made him an international bestseller. Influence on horror cannot be understated.
Now, The Shining came out before Carrie, right?
No, Carrie was his first published novel.
Movie, Zach, movie.
Shining was 1980.
Was it really? I just remember Jack wearing bell bottoms.
It was 1980. Yeah, first Stephen King book, first Stephen King movie.
You've heard of Carrie White, haven't you? 73 people died night of the prom.
Next semester. Terror runs in the family.
The film has its legacy, and it's very well known, and it is kind of a series of films. I know this is our high school horror episode, but it's basically our Carrie episode plus a couple other things. In 1999, there was a sequel to this movie. Sort of. What are your thoughts on The Rage, Carrie 2?
The story sucks. Overall, the movie sucks.
I despise this film.
However, I think it does do some cool things with the telekinesis. But other than that, that's really the only thing this movie has going for it is the kill.
In fact, the movie had the audacity to call itself Carrie 2. How do you sequelize a movie where the main character dies? It's
real simple. You make it her half-sister. And 20 years later, when her dad would be too old to even spit out sperm.
Yeah, too dead to impregnate anybody. So crass. It's not surprising to read that the movie started out as an unrelated screenplay, that they made a sequel to Carrie at one point because they realized the story was similar. The thing I really fucking hate about this movie, and there's a lot of things. In 1976, the outcast is a true social outcast who does not know how to dress herself, completely socially awkward, who has an insane mother. In 1999, the outcast is this Daria-like, snarky, quasi-goth girl who dresses in black and has a tattoo and listens to garbage and 9-inch nails. Fuck. Really? Okay. Rachel is our main character. The story is almost exactly the same, except this time, instead of teenagers just being assholes to the Carrie stand-in, now the bullies have the school-wide conspiracy. The football players have this game, basically, where they pick unattractive or socially maladjusted girls and then deflower them and then high-five each other. Dude, bro, frat fist, bullshit. Rachel's friend gets deflowered, kills herself, and this burns on her revenge. And this is a revenge. This is blatantly a revenge movie. It did not get the memo that Carrie is not a revenge film. Her wrath is righteous, and you are meant to enjoy it, and all the innocent people that get killed in the crossfire are not important.
I'm like you, there's a lot of things I don't like about this movie. But what I most despise about this movie is when she snaps, there's nothing to really lead up to her snapping and killing a whole bunch of people.
Her home life is kind of shitty, flat out abusive.
Are you really defending this movie?
No, I'm not defending it.
She has a shitty home life. I'll give you that.
I agree. It's unprovoked.
The only thing that really happens, and I mean, it's embarrassing as hell.
Losing your virginity broadcast to a party full of people, probably as embarrassing as having pig's blood poured on you at prom, but it's certainly not as visceral.
I feel like pig's blood being dumped on you is
more embarrassing.
More embarrassing.
Because at least she's getting laid.
Yeah, exactly. I would just look at that and be like, yeah, I'm embarrassed as hell, but you know what? I got laid, bitches.
The real embarrassment is meant to be like, oh, the guy she thought she loved and was nice is an asshole. I think that's the real embarrassment, but it doesn't register. Her rose tattoo spreads over her whole body. What the fuck?
Yeah, what the fuck's that? What the hell does telekinesis have to do with that?
The only thing this film really has going for it is the gore, double head impalement with a fire poker for a door,
CDs.
The killer CDs, which is another sign this movie was made in 1999. Girl has her eyeballs explode because Rachel makes the glass in her glasses burst. Spear gun castration, balls in the pool.
Yes, that's the famous death scene in the movie. It even tries to recreate the hand.
And I really, really hate that. Where the hand comes out of a pool. Anytime this movie reminds you of the original Carrie, it really, really suffers. The lead performance, Emily Burgle is the actor. She's okay. I like that they got Amy Irving back. Really, Sue Snell becoming a guidance counselor is like the only thing in this film that actually makes sense.
That does make sense.
And I like that Carrie's rampage has become this urban legend and that the burnt-out remains of the original Bates High Hitchcock reference, because Brian DePalma is a Hitchcock-humping fool, aspect is okay. And that's really like the only interesting way you could have done a sequel to Carrie, playing that up. It's got a stupid twist jump ending, too, which makes no sense. It's completely pointless.
Yeah,
no effect
she comes through the window.
Her boyfriend has a nightmare about her. Oh, fuck this movie.
You've gone so far astray, I fear for you.
You really think I'm gonna burn in hell, Mama, just for going to my prom?
I don't want to think about what's gonna happen to you. Sin knows you now. It'll find you.
Mama!
Your sin will find you, Carrie. And when it does, not even Jesus can help you.
Jesus will help me. He will help me if I really need him.
Not if he doesn't love you anymore.
We were talking earlier about how this movie almost has been remade every 10 years. If you count the sequel as a remake, and it pretty much is, it's been remade every 10 years. With the most recent remake, the 2002 television version has really been overshadowed. People have completely forgotten about this film now.
And it's a shame, too. It's decent. I said decent. I didn't say great.
The problem with remaking Carrie is that everybody knows how it ends. Everybody knows how the story goes. Everybody knows Carrie, psychic girl, gets her period, crazy mom goes nuts at the prom. Everybody knows that story. And this film follows that exact same outline very, very closely. Really, the question of remaking Carrie becomes whether or not the performances justify retelling the story. And in my opinion, the performances mostly justify in this scenario. Now, who stars in this version of Carrie from 2000?
Well, one of your heartthrobs, Angela Bettis.
I love Angela Bettis. I'm a huge fan of her. We haven't talked about May on the show yet, and someday we will find an excuse to do that. We'll do a Strange Girls episode someday and talk about May and a bunch of other movies I really like. She gives a very good performance in this film, and she makes her Carrie not only different from May, which is what got her this part, by the way. Producer saw that that movie and cast her in this. She also makes her version of Carrie very different from Sissy Spacek. Spacek's Carrie was like a wounded animal, ruined by years of systematic abuse. Why Bettis's Carrie, she plays it like a PTSD victim. You can see the anger on her face as people are humiliating her at school when she opens up her locker that's been filled full of tampons and has to do the walk of shame down the hallway. You can see this rage burning inside of her. And she even shows some sarcasm a couple times interacting with a couple of girls. This Carrie's a little edgier. When she goes nuts at the end, it's less like somebody's completely snapped and more like she's been a ticking time bomb. This was inevitable. Bettis is very good. The only thing about the movie that is obvious improvement, for me anyway, over the 76 version is Patricia Clarkson as Margaret. Gives a really good performance. She goes in the complete opposite direction of Piper Laurie. Piper Laurie was very big and over the top, and Clarkson underplays it. She goes for subtlety.
The big deal that they made over this movie, it's as close to the Stephen King book.
The book was written in a epistolary fashion. It was all told for newspaper clippings and interviews, all in flashback. Film maintains that. It maintains the meteorites falling from the sky when Carrie's born. It maintains her walking through town after the prom and destroying pretty much the town. All of these things are from the book. And the film is 133 minutes long and was originally aired in 2 halves over 2 nights. I don't know how I feel about the extended running time. It does not drag. It moves along pretty decently despite being over 2 hours long. In some ways, the extended length lets the material breathe a little more.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Carrie interacts with Chris alone in the school that I like. Sue runs into Carrie while she's buying makeup and they have a little girl-girl moment. I like that. Well, first off, the lead up to the prom massacre in this one, which we'll talk about in a minute, where her and Tommy are talking, is actually very well done. Bettis shines there. Miss Desjardins, I believe it was Miss Collins in the DePalma version. They keep the book name in this one. There's a scene where she sits down with Carrie at the prom and basically tells her high school is terrible and life after high school gets a lot better. Actually a great moment. I like that stuff, but there are some things, the scene where they kill the pigs and bleed the pigs, that goes on way longer than it needs to. There's a scene where Carrie loses it in class and shatters her desk, which is unneeded. Chris's dad is a lawyer and talking to the school principal. It's like, this stuff does not need to be in the movie. It's extraneous. But generally speaking, I don't mind the runtime. I usually complain when movies are too long. The prom massacre in this version compared to the 76 version.
It's nowhere near as good. I feel like the 76 version is a little more brutal.
Well, obviously, because this is a television movie, so they couldn't get away with as much.
Yeah, but I do think that this one does a couple of pretty cool things. Puts the water on the floor.
That's the only thing this version does that's really neat. Generally speaking, this version is nowhere near as intense or visceral.
When she pushes the water back with her power.
Yeah, I like that, and that's from the book. That's cool.
Oh, well, see, I never read the book, because there's 3 movies.
Read? Why do I need to read?
More importantly, why do I need to read Carrie? There's 3 movies about it now. 4 if you count the sequel. Why do I need to read that book?
The CGI in this TV version is pretty overdone and has not aged well. This film's over 10 years old now, by the way.
Oh, God.
When she wrapped Chris's car around the tree, that's overdone.
That's overdone.
And I mentioned earlier how everybody knows the ending to Carrie, but this one ends differently. You want to talk about the ending to this version of Carrie, JD, compared to the others?
Would you be referring to how she kills her mother, or the scene after that?
Well, how she kills her mom, that's out of the book. In the book, Margaret tries to drown Carrie in the bathtub, and Carrie makes her heart explode, basically.
Okay, I still like the impaling better.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know how I feel about the ending. The getaway.
Yeah, she lives. Carrie survives in this one.
Now Carrie needs to have a sequel. 2002 version.
This film was a backdoor pilot for a series. Carrie the series, and it would have been her on the run. It would have been The Fugitive with a telekinetic teenager. Now, how terrible would that have been?
You're talking to the person that likes the last 3 episodes of season 6 of Buffy, so I'm the wrong person to ask that question.
Would have been cool to see Angela Bettis on a weekly basis. Would have been nice to see her on a weekly TV show.
And I think that she could have sold it.
Certainly. She's a strong enough actress to carry a series. No doubt about that. That really goes completely against the moral of the story, and that's like the only thing I really actively dislike about the 2002 version. It's nowhere near as good as the 76 version, and that's its biggest problem. It can't compare. But it's honestly not a bad film. I like it better than the most recent version of Carrie, which is the reason we're doing the show.
The other kids, they think I'm weird. I don't want to be. I want to be normal. I have to try and be a whole person before it's too late.
I helped this little girl see the sin of her days and ways. She had made innocent. The curse of blood would
Mama, that's not even in the Bible. It doesn't say that anywhere.
Go to your closet and pray.
No. No!
2013 Carrie?
Yes. I don't know if I was disappointed that this movie underperformed at the box office. I was expecting this to be a big hit, and it burnt out. Nobody cared. I don't know if that means Chloe Moretz is not a big enough star to carry a film. I don't know if that means teenagers today don't care about Stephen King. I don't know if it means teenagers have already seen all the other versions and don't need a new version. I don't know if that means
that one.
I hope it's that one, because that means kids today are willing to watch movies from the 70s.
I feel like that's why this movie suffers. Everybody knows the story.
And it maintains the original structure very, very closely. It does include some stuff from the book that wasn't in the 76 version. Generally speaking, it's the exact same story.
Yeah, but I disagree with the people who said it was a shot-for-shot remake.
No, it's not. There are some minor differences. Instead of Carrie's principal calling her Cassie, instead of flipping the ashtray, she makes the water cooler explode. And Margaret is a self-abuser in this film. She cuts herself. What do you feel about that difference?
I don't know that I like it. I accept it.
I guess it makes sense for her character. The thing this movie was supposed to do is update the story for a modern audience. Carrie's breakdown is recorded on a phone and posted on YouTube. Instead of reading books about telekinesis in the library, she looks up videos of it on YouTube.
I like how they handled that, by the way. I was worried she would have social media accounts and...
Yeah, is Carrie going to be on Twitter?
But no.
Thankfully, that would have been terrible.
There's a boy.
Generally speaking, the modern updating is window dressing. It doesn't really affect the story in any way.
I feel like it should be a case of they literally just do a shot-for-shot remake and just update the style every 10 years. There's no way you're going to top 1976.
And again, this is that film's biggest problem. It's just not as good as the original. A lot of people are saying Chloe Moretz is miscast. I'm a fan of Chloe. She's a very good actress. She is miscast. She's too strong. You don't really believe that this is a girl that's been getting the shit beat out of her every day, all her life. Her interaction with her mother is too willful. You just generally wonder, why doesn't she just run away from home? That seems like something this Carrie would do. Purely aesthetically speaking, I dislike the way she manipulates her powers with her hands.
That doesn't really work well on screen.
No, it looks kind of cheesy.
Me being a big telekinesis fan...
Your opinion matters in this regard.
My opinion matters. That's one of the biggest problems X-Men had, is that every time Jean used her powers, it looked really goofy.
Now, another question about Chloe. Is she too pretty to play Carrie?
Yeah, she is.
She is, but everybody in this movie is beautiful. There are 2 fat people in the whole film. I know, I count it. This film is shot in Los Angeles. Everybody is fucking beautiful in this film.
I think the point they were going for is, nowadays, it doesn't really matter what you look like.
Sure that you can still get bullied even if you're beautiful, but no 16-year-old boy is going to look at Chloe Moretz and turn their nose up at that, alright?
Look at all these attractive teenagers that are viewed on screen right before they kill themselves.
Yeah, the Amanda Todds, etc.
The point I'm making is that what guy in their right mind would look at some of these teenagers that are killing themselves and be like, "Ooh, God, stay away! Please don't have sex with me." Of course, though, I'm shallow and have little to no standards.
Moretz is too pretty. Everybody's too pretty. The whole movie is very slick. That's modern studio horror films for you. Everybody's beautiful and has perfect teeth. What are your thoughts on the CGI? Quite a bit of it, as you'd expect.
Some of it is well done.
I liked her whipping the electrical wires from and setting people on fire. That was cool. Or where she floats above the gym as it's burning.
God, that's so stupid!
I believe in the theater you actually said, "Ah!"
I said, and this is where they jumped the shark.
Otherwise, I feel like the prom scene actually works pretty well. It's actually pretty well orchestrated. I like her crushing people with the bleachers and stuff like that. This version gets that it's not a revenge story. Carrie's rampage is played for horror. That was well done.
Do you like that she saved the gym teacher?
No, I do not. That goes against her snapping and just killing everybody indiscriminately. Aside from that, the gym scene works pretty well. Even though she's wrong for the part, Moritz still gives a pretty decent performance.
The movie has a decent story.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course it's got a decent story.
Overall, they have a decent cast.
Julianne Moore is good. Gabrielle Wilde is good. Portia Doubleday is really, really hateful as Chris. You cannot wait to see her die. And she gets it in this one. She gets an extended, painful death scene.
Which is good.
She had it coming.
Me, personally, I would have lifted her up and, ripped her limb for limb, but hey.
Yeah, they don't want the movie to get an NC-17.
Yeah.
And the film actually makes time for quiet moments. It's not like most modern studio horror films where there has to be a jump scare every 5 minutes. It actually does allow the story to breathe. The film's not terrible. Love Movie for Shrug, though. There really isn't any obvious improvement over the previous versions.
They should have had, fucking Precious play Carrie, and then...
They wanted to do it accurately.
If fucking Johnny Storm can be black, why can't Carrie be black?
There's no reason she couldn't be. I didn't even like the movie as much as the 2002 version. It's about on the same level, but I honestly feel like the 2002 version is a little better.
I disagree. I think the 2013 is a little better than 2000. And I contribute that mostly to its budget.
Well, that is true. This film obviously has a much bigger budget than the TV version did, but I feel like Angela Bettis was a better Carrie.
You're right. I will give you that. Angela Bettis was a better character. Overall, this movie was slightly better, and that can be contributed to its budget.
At least it didn't replicate the jump scare at the end.
Right. At least it did. Setting you up. You were getting right.
I was waiting for it.
And then it faded to black. It means the people under the ground had sex. It faded to black.
But anyway, that's our nearly an hour's worth of discourse on the Carrie franchise, as it were, really a series of remakes. But that original, though, is the only one that's really super good.
They were all good. Well, except for Carrie, too.
Tonight, someone has come to the prom alone. Someone who watches in the silent corridors. Someone who waits until no one can help. Prom night. If you're not back by midnight, you won't be coming home.
This is obviously not the only, even though I feel like it is the iconic high school horror film, there were films that followed in its path, and 1980's Prom Night is a prominent example. This is one of 3 slasher films Jamie Lee did in the early 80s. The original Prom Night, have you seen it recently?
No.
Okay.
I just know that it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre without the farm and chainsaw.
No. Have you actually seen this movie? Because it's not
it's
like
like
that
a guy in a ski mask axing people.
Yeah, that does happen. Follows the slasher outline pretty closely. There's a crime in the past, an escaped criminal, there are threatening phone calls, the murders start again 20 years later. In this case, a girl dies. These kids are playing hide and seek in a abandoned high school, and the girl dies, and then 20 years later, the killing starts again. And what's interesting about this film is that it takes a long time to get to the horror. It's only an 80-minute film, and it's about an hour in before the murder starts.
Oh yeah, that's why I hated that movie.
You'd think that would give us a lot of time to develop our lead characters, right? But I mean, they're pretty thin. Jamie Lee is the final girl, of course. But she's not actually the protagonist, and she's defined by her relationship with her neurotic brother named Alex. She's a bitch and her boyfriend, who's the school drug dealer, and they're planning to pull some sort of prank on the prom night, which is pretty blatantly called back to Carrie, I think. The only character that's really interesting is this one girl who is basically pushed into having sex by her boyfriend, and then immediately regrets it. That's realistic. Being an 80s slasher movie, she had sex, so immediately afterwards she dies. Literally, immediately afterwards she dies. There are some actually eerie shots of empty high school hallways at night. Why is that creepy? Have you ever been in a high school when it's empty?
I have.
It's eerie, isn't it?
Yes.
Is that because we're used to high school hallways always being full of people, and when they're empty, your footsteps are echoing, and it seems very still and uneasy?
To me, it always seemed haunting. The lights are out in the hallways,
It's dark.
You're walking, you don't really hear anything.
It's a good place to set a horror movie.
It is. It is terrifying.
The movie was directed by Paul Lynch, who also did an 80s slasher called Humongous, that I'm a big fan of. The direction is atmospheric and well done, but the movie's also pretty campy. There's a lot of disco in this film. A lot of disco dancing. Jamie Lee has an extended dancing sequence. Have you ever wanted to see Leslie Nielsen boogie? You see it in this film. The killer has a sparkly ski mask on, which is kind of, and gets the shit beat out of him by the nerd, which reminded me of Ghostface. This killer is borderline incompetent. He almost forgets his axe during a chase scene. That was intentional, though. There's a cool scene where a guy gets decapitated and the head rolls out onto the prom floor.
Yeah.
This isn't a horror movie with a cheap jump scare ending. It actually plays the end for halfos. But overall, 1980s Prom Night is mediocre. Not really that memorable. Would you say that holds true?
I don't remember much of this movie, but I don't remember really liking it.
Belatedly, this film did spawn a franchise. Not until 1987. It's not surprising to read that this was an unrelated script that was given the Prom Night title as a boost. Actually, none of the films have anything to do with each other, other than they're set in a high school and on prom night. But I'm actually a big fan of Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. Now, you haven't seen this film.
I have not.
You should see it. I think you would like it. In 1957, Mary Lou Mahoney, promiscuous, rebellious teenage girl and also the school prom queen, jilts her boyfriend on prom night. She fucks another dude behind the curtain at the prom. In revenge, when she's up on stage getting the crown, he throws a stink bomb up on stage. Unfortunately, the fuse catches her dress on fire and she horribly burns to death in front of everybody. 25 years later.
Oh, well, that's possible.
Vicky Carpenter, good girl, finds Mary Lou's tiara in the back storeroom of the school, puts it on, and slowly becomes possessed by the spirit, who is, of course, out for revenge. Her former boyfriend, who's now the principal of the school and played by Michael Ironside.
So, where does Jamie Lee Curtis come in?
Jamie Lee isn't in this one.
But she's on the cover.
No, she's not. You're mistaken. She's on the cover of the first one.
Alright.
It's a horror comedy, but it's some effectively creepy moments. The lead girl is being slowly corrupted by Mary Lou's spirit, and some of the hallucinations she has are goofy. She's playing volleyball in the gym. The volleyball net becomes a giant spider web. Eventually, Vicky does become possessed by the spirit of Mary Lou and proceeds to act like a total bitch to all her friends, and it's very funny. Notably, there's a scene where she pisses off her best friend by being a jerk. She decides she's going to seduce her in the girl shower room. Even though this was 1987, both actresses go full frontal. There's a naked chase scene through the girls' dressing room. In addition to the exploitation value of all the frontal nudity, it's actually pretty suspenseful.
This is kind of like a spiritual sequel of Carrie.
It does directly reference Carrie at the end, when the shit hits the fan at the prom.
She impaled her mother?
No, somebody does get impaled, though, with a neon sign. And there's a lot of humor. She kills a priest and says, worst thing about dying and not going to heaven? No wings! There's a lot of horror in joke. Character last names in this film. See if these sound familiar to you. Carpenter, Browning, Creighton, Waters, O'Bannon.
Some of those sound pretty familiar.
Sound familiar, yeah. The cast is very good. Wendy Lyon is the lead actress. Very nice to look at and gives a good performance. Overall, if you haven't seen it, and it's not a particularly well-known film, check out Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. I'm a big fan of this movie. Way better than the first one.
I just want to say that I knew about this film. Probably pretty well known.
But you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it, but I knew about it. I knew it existed.
You remember seeing the VHS box at the old Riddle stores, I bet.
Yes.
I haven't actually seen Prom Night 3, the last cast from 1990. Mary Lou comes back for that one. I have no idea what it's about. I have seen Prom Night 4, Deliver Us from Evil, from 1992. Who knew there were 4 prom night movies? And this one's notable because the kids actually skip the prom and have a house party. The killer is a Catholic priest who is murdering sinful teenagers. And this is going to sound puerile, but the thing I most remember about Prom Night 4 is there's a really hot sex scene. That's pretty much all I remember about that.
Anyhow, Prom Night 2008.
The first one was remade, though isn't really a remake because it has nothing nothing to do with the story.
Yeah, it sucks.
Prom Night 2008 blows ass. This was during that weird period in the early 2000s where all the 80s slasher films were getting remade. Kids today have not seen the original Prom Night. They know nothing about it. What's the point of taking that name? PG-13 mall horror bullshit.
I've seen Prom Night 2008. It sucks. That's all we have to say about it.
Yeah, there's nothing more to say about it. It's a shitty movie.
The students at Harrington High have always suspected their teachers were from another planet. This time, they're right. These 6 students won't just question authority. They'll have to destroy it.
Doing a lot of jumping around here. 1998's The Faculty. What are your thoughts on this film, Mr. Mash?
Kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but in high school.
Which is a clever idea.
Yeah.
In high school, everybody feels isolated from everybody else, and I wish the movie did more with that. It doesn't really expand on that idea very much.
It has a pretty strong cast, at least I feel it does.
Elijah Woods is alright in the lead. We've mentioned Clea Duvall before. She's good in this. Laura Harris has a really bad southern accent. Jon Stewart wears an eye patch. Selma Hayek wears a pair of scrubs and cashes a paycheck. Maybe as a reference to Carrie, Piper Laurie has a cameo. Robert Patrick's in it and basically plays the T-1000 again. Famke Janssen, I know you noticed her.
I noticed her alright.
She starts out as bookish, and then when she becomes an evil space alien, she gets sexy again.
Oh no, she was sexier as
That's right.
As the librarian.
The movie pulls off even making Josh Hartnett kind of like, which is pretty incredible. I'm not really a big fan of The Faculty. It has a really intriguing premise that it doesn't really play up. It becomes a boring chase movie at the end. It gets really silly in parts. The football players are attacking the kids on the bus. Everybody sprouts tentacles.
Okay, but
the head with the tentacles moving along the ground, that shit was silly. Waving me off. Deal with it.
What about the chasing at the end
with the giant queen alien? That was cool.
But even before that, she's naked, and you see the shadow of tentacles behind her, which is kind of cool. I thought.
Yeah,
that was kind of a cool effect.
That was an all right moment. I do like the giant monster at the end. That's some good giant monster effects,
practical effects.
And I do like. Funny thing about this movie is that the only way to figure out if somebody is an alien, the aliens have an aversion to cocaine. All the kids get together and do drugs, which is kind of a funny subversion.
Well, no. The cocaine dehydrates the body.
Yeah, some bullshit. Cocaine is how you figure out somebody's an alien. Is that scene where all the kids are in the garage sniffing coke together and giggling? Is that parody of the blood testing scene from The Thing?
I mean, I didn't really catch that, but now that you pointed out, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think that was probably a deliberate reference.
I like this movie.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
I don't think that it's a great movie. It's still entertaining.
The thing I really dislike about this movie, though, is the goth ends up with the head of the football team, and the photo nerd ends up with Queen Bitch. What the hell?
Drug dealer becomes the head of the football team.
What the fuck was up with that? It's totally unrealistic. Aliens taking over high school, I can buy that.
That's reasonable.
The drug dealer becoming the head of the football team, yeah. And I feel like the ending of this movie where everything goes back to normal, I don't think that would happen if the high school got taken over by body snatchers from space. Obviously, a high school setting was very popular for 80s slasher films, and there were a bunch. You've only seen a few of these films. Massacre at Central High is actually from 76, and it's a weird movie. It's actually a metaphor for the Soviet Revolution set in a high school. Lots of exploding cars in that one. A kid takes a dive into a swimming pool, and there's no water in the pool. Notable because this movie was an influence on Heathers, which is a film we're not talking about today because it's not a horror film.
I don't know. I feel like we could squeeze it in.
I want to do that movie justice, though, because I really like Heathers a lot.
Fuck me gently with a chainsaw.
Yeah, and if we're going to talk about that movie, we need to devote a whole hour to it. Graduation Day from 81 is pretty hilarious. Diana Quigley is in it, gets naked. Killer wears a fencing mask, kills a guy by throwing a football with a sword in it at him. The only legitimately clever thing this movie does is the killer times all of his murders with a stopwatch. Graduation Day is a laugher. It's a really goofy one. Student Bodies from 81 you've seen.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's a slasher movie parody right in the first wave of slasher films, which says to me that immediately people realized these movies were just a collection of cliches. What were your thoughts on Student Bodies, which is a movie I like?
It was funny.
It really goes off the rails in the last act.
I don't remember much about it, dude, because you know how we are.
We watch movies and we talk over them. There are some good gags I like. There's an extended sequence where the film cuts away to a dude in an office and he says,
"Ladies and gentlemen, in order to achieve an R rating today, a motion picture must contain full frontal nudity, graphic violence, or an explicit reference to the sex act. Since this film has none of those, and since research has proven that R-rated films are by far the most popular with the movie-going public, the producers of this motion picture have asked me to take this opportunity to say, fuck you."
This film has been rated R by the MPA. That's like the best scene in the movie. There's some funny stuff in Student Buddies. Check it out. Slaughter High from 86 is another great, in quotation marks, high school slasher film. Actors in their 30s and 40s playing high school students.
Oh, well, that's the best.
Yeah, Caroline Monroe is in it. Premise behind Slaughter High. Bunch of kids humiliate a nerd. She invites this guy into the shower to pretend they're going to have sex.
And then dumps him in a vat of toxic waste.
No. He gets naked. And they pull back the curtain. Everybody takes pictures of him naked, dunks his head in the toilet, sprays him with shaving cream.
And then dump him in a vat of toxic waste?
No. What happens is they're not done humiliating it, because then they give him an exploding joint. Why the nerd, Marty, is in the science lab, he lights up the joint, and it sets off a barrel of acid, burns his face, and then 20 years later, all these people get invited to a high school reunion in a creepy abandoned high school, not thinking for a minute that the kid they tortured in high school is coming back to wreak vengeance on them.
Okay, well, that's kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah, but it's very poorly done. It's a very badly made film. It's very goofy. A guy drinks a soda, and it's an acidic soda, and his stomach explodes. What's the one girl's immediate course of action after that? Take a bath in the rotted, abandoned bathtub in the abandoned high school. The bathtub is full of acid, and she melts via stop-motion animation. Couple decides that nothing makes them hornier than all their friends dying, so they fuck in the middle of the school. They're fucking, and the girl says, "Talk dirty to me," and the guy says, tits, screw, wank.
I would have been like, dirt, mud.
The weird thing with Slaughter High is the guy who played Marty, the slasher, killed himself after, which makes the film seem weird and mean-spirited. If you like shitty movies, check out Slaughter High. Anything to say about Return to Horror High?
George Clooney's first movie?
Yeah, one of his first movies. Very strange film. It can't decide if it's trying to be a comedy or not. And it's a meta-horror movie. Remaking a film.
Yeah.
And it goes nuts.
Don't they have to, kill the killer by burning the film?
Something like that, yeah. Return to Horror High is a weird one. Can't seem to decide if it's a straight horror film or a meta take on horror film or a comedy. I remember there was a cool sequence where a guy gets tied to a table in the science lab though and stabbed to death. I remember that. But otherwise, yeah, not a lot of recollection of Return to Horror High.
Do you remember how Tammy Bishop was always cutting glass?
Derp, 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 derp. At the very tail end of the second wave of American slasher movies, 1989's Cutting Glass. This is another very hilarious bad movie, notable for being one of Brad Pitt's first films. You buy the movie on DVD now, guess who's on the cover?
Brad Pitt?
Yeah.
Not Brad Pitt then, it's probably like Brad Pitt now.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's also notable, one of Jill Shalonen's horror films. One of the weird scenes in this movie is Jill Shalonen is wearing a short skirt and talking to the high school principal, who's played by Roddy McDowall, and he's making her bend over so he can look up her skirt. What makes it weird is that it's Roddy McDowall.
Same thing with Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat, I guess.
Yeah, the one with Ozzy in it.
Yeah, when they released it on DVD a few years ago,
Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne's face were right on the cover.
Ozzy Osbourne is starring Gene Simmons
and they have 2-minute cameos.
Not Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne then.
Brad Pitt actually does play a main character. Jill Shalonen is dating Brad Pitt, but it's a thing for this other guy. One of them's crazy. Cutting Class is another fun 80s slash movie. Very campy, very cheesy. You will laugh, both intentionally and unintentionally. I always remember a line where the janitor looks at the kids and says, "I'm the custodians of your fucking future." That line's always stuck with me for some reason.
There is a time to be real and a time for manners. I'm going to teach you to say please and thank you and how to survive in this shithouse. I'm the only teacher that you'll remember. I'm the custodian of your fucking destiny.
Don't you hate it when you get detention?
Horror films set in high school continue to be a thing. Just last year, there was a movie that came out called Detention. Now, have you seen this one?
No.
Okay, this is a weird movie. A lot of people really hated this film.
Time travel, UFOs, body swapping, magnetic bears,
exploding
animals exploding, a fly creature with a TV hand, and the end of the world.
All of that and more is featured in this film.
Wow.
In addition to having some slasher-style killings, there's a lot of heavy pop culture references. At the end, the hero and the bad guy of the film have a karate fight. Before doing that, they summon the spirits of Patrick Swayze and Steven Seagal, respectively. It's a horror comedy, but it's more comedy than horror. Sometimes very funny, sometimes incredibly annoying. The lead girl in this film actually won a Phantom Award last year for upcoming talent. She was in The Conjuring this year. She was one of the daughters in that. She's adorable. Really, really cute.
The oldest daughter in The Conjuring?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Detention. Weird movie. Really whack. Notable, a lot of these high school horror films are bug nuts insane.
Gee, Zach, I wonder why.
High school makes people crazy. They're still making them. This year a film came out called Detention of the Dead, which was a zombie movie set in a high school. Supposedly it's not very good.
But we forgot Dance with the Dead.
Dance with the Dead is one I intentionally left off the list because I have not seen it in a very long time and remember very little about it. But yeah, zombie movie set at the prom. Remember it being not bad.
One of those rare direct-to-video gems.
Only thing I really remember about that movie, a guy with a garage band distracts the zombies by playing music.
Yeah.
The zombies don't just rise out of the grave, they explode out of their grave, like in Peter Jackson's Dead Alive.
Yeah, a zombie gets a fucking guitar to the head, and
I don't remember that.
It's a pretty cool movie.
I remember enjoying Dance with the Dead, but that is one I watched late at night while I was doing homework at the same time, so I was only sort of halfway paying attention to. Obviously, there are way more high school horror films. There are many I have not seen.
I mean, we've talked about all the important ones.
Carrie and Prom Night. Horror film set in high school is a cool idea. Everybody feels pissed off and isolated when they're teenagers in high school. It's terrible for everybody. You're surrounded by people who want to kick your ass, to quote Johnny Cage in the Mortal Kombat movie.
You're surrounded by people that want to kick your ass and one.
Everybody's hormones are at pitch level.
Nobody's happy. If you're like us, you're like the lonely loser that doesn't have a girlfriend willing to have sex with you.
We were almost on the bottom of the high school social hierarchy. You were a drama nerd, so you were a little higher up than me.
I feel like we were higher up than that.
I have always put myself right above the mentally disabled kids.
And then I'm a step above you.
It is really a fertile ground for horror. Go off to another topic since we still got a little bit of time. Something that was neat that happened on my blog, one of the actors who was in one of the independent films I reviewed actually left a comment on my review of their film. Yeah! Larry Clark's film, Martha Girls.
Yep, stop caring.
One of the actors from the movie commented on the blog and said, hey, thanks for your opinion.
You mean he wasn't one of those pretentious actors that was like, hey, thanks for the opinion, now go fuck yourself?
Larry Clark frequently cast his films with non-professionals. He's probably a normal dude who somehow ended up acting in a movie. Halloween's over now. Are you still recovering from the post-Halloween blues, or are you getting up in the Christmas spirit?
A little bit of both. Got one more gift to buy and then I'm done.
For our viewers, this might be the last horror-themed episode of the year.
No, because we're doing...
Well, I don't want to spoil anything. By the time this episode comes out, previous episode is going to be late. I apologize for that. Things have just been really, really busy. And anytime we try to do a seasonal episode, it's always late. Have you noticed that? Mm-hmm. We should just stop trying to do seasonal episodes. You want to give them the email address, Mr. Mash, if you remember it?
bangersinmash88@yahoo.com.
And that's the letter N. We've got a Facebook group. We have not really had any movement on that lately. Go ahead. We would love it if you liked us. We like you. Use the new terrible YouTube comments now that the YouTube comments section has been integrated with Google Plus and everybody's losing their shit about this. It's pretty annoying. But comment on us anyway. As always, I am Mr. Bangers, and my co-host here is Mr. Mash.
AKA JD.
Yeah, AKA JD. I think it's about time we graduate out of this episode. What do you think?
I agree.